Hello, it's another episode of the Gaming Memories Podcast, where I, your host, the Prophet of the Gaming Gods themselves, even me, Mother Father, Kojima the Son, and Carmack, the motherfucking Holy Ghost, commanded me to make the One True Video Game Podcast. All I had to do was interview creative and interesting people about their favorite gaming memories growing up, and today we are following the Lord's command, and I have a creative and interesting guest. Today's guest is, drumroll please, Eric from the Unlockables podcast. Eric from the Unlockables podcast, who is our resident Kingdom Hearts extraordinaire authority figure, whatever you want to call it. If you have a Kingdom Hearts question, you're going to ask Eric at the Unlockables podcast. Obviously, all of his applicable links will be in the podcast description. Eric does all sorts of things, has an amazing podcast, and knows a shit ton about Kingdom Hearts. I'm going to let him give you more information, but if you have any doubt, it's one of my favorite podcasts. I've been on the King of Games with him, and I always enjoy his energy, so suffices to say, please go check him out. In other words, remember to share the good news of the gaming gospel, and ye shall be blessed. Support the podcast, then my link tree, and give me money if you're dumb. Don't give me money if you're smart. And, yeah, that's it. Eric from the motherfucking Unlockables podcast. I say these things in the name of me, Mother Father, Kojima the Son, and Carmack, the Holy Ghost. Amen, and enjoy the show. Hello, Mr. Eric. Mr. Unlockable.
Hello, Cade, prophet of the one true gaming religion.
Would you like to join my cult? It's only 10%, and you have to hand over your wife, but it's really not that big of a deal. I will do like an intro, so people will kind of know who you are.
Okay.
But just for the listeners, who are you? What do you do on the internet? Why should people give a shit about what games you've played?
That question I'm still asking myself to this day. Why should people still give a shit about the games that I'm playing? Yeah, but no, my name is Eric. I host a little solo project called The Unlockables, which I bill as the story video games, the people who play them, and the memories made along the way. And it's just kind of been my solo creative output of like interviewing other content creators, kind of like you do, about the stuff that they make, chronicling the games that I play, going back through either my backlog or games that I played as a kid and kind of reviewing them or chronicling them or writing little essay pieces on them, just kind of depending on what fits the mood, whatever I feel like doing for that particular game. I've been having a lot more people come on and talk about games with me. It's kind of like more collaborative effort. And then the thing I'm probably most well known for right now in the community is my Guiding Keys, the Story of Kingdom Hearts series, where I decided to sequentially play through every single piece of Kingdom Hearts media that was available and kind of break down and put together the stories of its development, of the narrative, of all that kind of stuff. And that series is still ongoing. It just reached 24 episodes with over 40 hours of Kingdom Hearts content breakdown. Yeah, it's very extensive. So that's by far and away the most extensive, successful thing I've done for any kind of content creation. But yeah, it's just a little bit about me. It's the Unlockables podcast. I really only have it in podcast form. I don't really kind of mess with any kind of like video or YouTube. Like the podcast will go up on YouTube, but you'll just be staring at like the static key art image that I made in Photoshop, if you prefer to listen to it that way. But yeah, you can be found wherever podcatcher you're on. It can be found there.
So is it like it's like a variety where you're not doing a Kingdom Hearts episode every episode? They just come in as you do them, mixed in with the other types of episodes?
Yeah, so usually when I play a Kingdom Hearts game, I'll build out those scripts and kind of determine how many episodes they're going to be. And I'll kind of intersperse other episodes in between them. And so at least that's the way it's been since I've come back. I was on a bit of a summer break as I was recording some collaborative projects with other people that will soon come to light. The way it's been is I've had we're finally in Kingdom Hearts 3. So we're nearing the end of that adventure. And I've done like a Kingdom Hearts episode and then another episode in between to kind of space those out. I guess you would call it like a season of content.
Yeah.
I did part 1 of Kingdom Hearts 3, and then Keith and I did Shadow the Hedgehog, and then I did part 2, and then I wrote a little essay on Suikoden 2 that I played for the first time. So I kind of spaced it out like that just to get a little bit of variety, whether that's bringing on other people to talk about games with me, or like I said, just kind of flexing my creative writing muscles and trying to write a review and extract the things from a video game that I think that I took away from it, rather than just kind of being like your standard IGN or GameSpot review.
Sweet. I smoked way too much weed before we started this podcast. I was
I was
thinking,
asleep. I was asleep until about 30 minutes ago, so it's okay.
well, you started going off of Kingdom Hearts, and I was thinking about all the things I wanted to ask you about Kingdom Hearts, and then there
Oh
were so
shit.
many questions. I had a short circuit. I couldn't choose, and I'm like, and then I had to decide we probably shouldn't talk about Kingdom Hearts yet. I quite like the series,
Yes.
and I literally have never played any of the handhelds. So I went Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, bought 3. I think it was on Steam or Epic when it launched, but I remember buying it
Yes.
day one. I made it like 3 hours, 4 hours in, and just thought,
Yeah, the jump from if you're going straight from 2 to 3 is quite violent.
it did not land for me. So one
Yeah.
day I would like to do something similar, or maybe even have like a collab episode or video or something about like if we could condense down all of Kingdom Hearts into like a really juicy hour, right? Walk
Yeah,
someone
it's,
through it.
it's certainly possible. I mean, I've done 40 hours on it, so I wouldn't be the best person to ask for that, but
Well, you know that Viviata guy that does all the Dark Souls stuff? Lore?
yes.
Like you could be that dude on YouTube.
Yes, there's also a guy called My Name is Bife, and he does kind of all the Destiny lore that's come out about that game too. So they both kind of do the same thing. Yeah, I don't know if I'm that well spoken because both of those Vidi Vadi or whatever his name is incredibly well spoken and incredibly good at his craft. So
Yeah, you could do it, dude. You're my favorite KOG guy. Yeah, I'll say it publicly. My favorite host and guest has been Eric.
even though I've stabbed you in the back a couple times,
Yeah, you're not Chris. It doesn't matter. He's the only
Oh.
one that gets no forgiveness.
right?
So, what year were you born, if you don't mind me asking?
1991. As of this
91.
recording, I am 33 years young.
I didn't realize you were that much more of a young buck compared to me.
Yeah, the more I engage with people, the more I realize that I am kind of on the younger side of our community here.
Having a shaved bald head does make you look older.
It does, yeah.
the way it works.
But balding runs in my family, so it was inevitable. So I just bit the bullet this year.
I had my head shaved all this year till like the last couple of months. I grew it back out. Definitely made me look older.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw you, I saw one of your short form videos and you still had the long hair and like the circular glasses. And I was like, oh, this guy's fucking cool.
Clearly not, because couldn't maintain. No, we're getting back to that. So 33
Yes.
puts you. I have a feeling your first console was a handheld, and if it was 91, it might have been the Game Boy Color.
No. So my first console was the Super Nintendo.
God damn it!
Yes. And I remember getting that at 3 years old. So I would have gotten it in 1994.
You
I did
got
have a game.
console at 3.
Yes. My father brought it home for me because he's crazy.
Dang, dude, that's early.
Yeah, it was, but it's right around the time when you start to like have formative memories. Like that's on the very
Mhm.
cusp of like conscious living memory that I can possibly remember. But I have a very clear, vivid memory of the night my dad brought the Super Nintendo home. He put it up on like the cabinet where the TV was, and you know the TVs back then and the way the wire controller was connected. You put the Super Nintendo on top, you plug the controller in, and the wire kind of hung down in front of the TV, and that's the way you played it. You didn't have the luxury of the wireless controllers. And yeah, I very vividly remember the Super Nintendo had the Super Mario. It was 94, so it would have had the Super Mario All Stars collection that had Super Mario World in it. And Super Mario World was the very, very first video game I ever played. I have very vivid memories of playing it. My dad like trying to play it with me. He wasn't like a video game guy, and to this day, I don't think my dad has played more than maybe like 5 video games. But I think it was just like the cool thing at the time, and he picked whether he like picked it up for like birthday or just like picked it up on a whim because it was like the cool thing at the time. I don't know, but yeah, he ended up bringing it home when I was 3, and I immediately fell in love with Super Mario World. It's one of those things when you're young. It's you watch the shows and things happen on the TV, right? But when you experience a game for the first time at that age, and it's like, oh, the thing I do on the controller makes the guy move on the TV. That's just whatever 3-year-old brain you have that kind of shatters everything that you know about the world. And yeah, I was hooked very, very early on.
So, how early did you start identifying or feeling like games is a huge hobby? Because obviously you spend lots of your excess time creating gaming content. You love video games. Have you always had this level of passion for games from 3-year-old Super Nintendo? Oh my God, this blew my mind, or did it come later?
No, I think it was from that very early age because most of my childhood memories around that age and growing up, I can remember are kind of associated and built around video games. We had So my dad worked during the week and my mom worked on the weekends as a hairdresser. And when she went to work on Saturdays, my dad would watch us, and we had this thing. It was called No Rules Saturday, and the kids would like get to do. Me and my sister would get to do like whatever we wanted. Most of those Saturdays, I would just sit in front of because back then it was like, oh, you can only have like an hour of video game time at a time because it'll fry your eyes and rot your brain, right, and corrupt the youth of America. And we turned out okay, I think. During those Saturdays, I just remember sitting in front of the TV and playing the Super Nintendo for wake up, have your breakfast, your bowl of cereal, watch the Saturday morning cartoons, and then play Super Nintendo from late morning till my mom got home in the evening. And so yeah, it was always something that I just loved doing. It's literally been in my life as long as I have conscious thought.
What were you playing? Mario?
Yeah, so we had the All Stars collection. So I went through the first, that had Super Mario Bros., Mario Bros. 2 USA, Mario 3, and Super Mario World on it. So I got to experience Mario right away. And then from 94 till about the later 90s, I just remember like a smorgasbord of games based on like things that I was into at the time. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was really big. I remember I had TMNT Tournament Fighters and Turtles in Time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, which that game bucks. There was just other games like that based around things that I liked. I wasn't quite old enough to hit what I think now are the standouts on the console. Like, so I missed out on kind of like Super Metroid, Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, some of those bigger games that you would identify with the Super Nintendo. But I think it was based on mainly the popular things that I liked in cartoons or in shows or things that I was watching. One of the more formative ones when you get a little bit later down that road towards the end of the Super Nintendo's life cycle was a Super Mario RPG. So from very early on, I was a Mario guy. I was pretty firmly entrenched in Nintendo, in Mario's camp. I didn't have any experience with any kind of Sega consoles at the time. I had friends that had Sega consoles, but I had the one console. I was a Nintendo guy, and I've to this day kind of been a Nintendo guy through and through.
Was it Hyperstone Heist? Turtles in Time was only on the SNES, and there was two fighters. One, the Genesis one, was I think called something different, right?
Right. People have mixed feelings about tournament fighters. I think that came out around the time that Street Fighter 2 kind of took off, if my memory serves me correctly, because there were a lot of the Street Fighter 2 adjacent games because of how big that game was. I think that game has some balancing issues that make it kind of a problem, but I remember having fun with it. And you don't know any better back then because you get like one or two games a year at like your birthday and Christmas, and you play them. You don't know any better.
Yeah, I got it mixed up. I thought Hyperstone Heist was the fighter, but that's the beat 'em up on the Genesis, which is like significantly different. I remember there being like a Super Nintendo versus Sega battle as a kid.
Interesting.
I was a little bit older than you. We had Streets of Rage versus Final Fight arguments.
Yep.
There was those kind of things going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hyperstone Heist is definitely considered the inferior version now in retrospect. Turtles in Time is one of those like cult classics. You'll be kicked out of the room if you criticize in most places. I mean, it's very well beloved.
And until I played Streets of Rage 2 last year, Turtles in Time was really like my only kind of experience in the beat 'em up genre. So until I played Streets of Rage 2, I was like, this is my number one beat 'em up because I just don't have anything else to compare it to.
Have you played any other beat 'em ups?
So far, Streets of Rage 2 was the only one. I've been meaning to go back and check out some of the other ones now that I played it, because we played it for that King of Games 96 last year, I think it was. I don't know. All the King of Games blur together.
You said you had some friends that had Sega. Is there anything that stood out that you got to play at a friend's house that you thought was legitimately cool, but you were bummed you couldn't get it?
Yeah, so that's kind of a interesting segue to my history of games. So my cousin was like my first friend in life. We grew up, he was like the brother I never had. I have a sister, but my cousin was like the brother that I never had. And he would spend the night at my house a lot. I would spend the night at his house a lot. His family was better off than ours, so they just had access to more things. And he did have a Sega, so I did have some passing experience with Sonic. I was aware of him. I told the story on an episode I did about Sonic Adventure. When I went into his basement, the Super Nintendo was hooked up to their like big tube TV, and the Sega was relegated to like a side room where they kept all their, and like a really small TV where they kept all their workout equipment. So my perception of Sega was like, oh, it's not good enough to be out here on the big screen TV. It's in the side room. You got to keep it hidden away. He tended to get more games than I did just because, you have a wealthier family. The kids just get more stuff. That's just how it is. I learned a lot of games that I would end up getting from him. He would show me a lot of games. And once we got to the PS1 era, my dad also brought home a PS1. That's when my cousin introduced me to one of the games that I consider foundational in my gaming history. That was my introduction to Final Fantasy with Final Fantasy IX. That game kind of shattered all my expectations of video games because up until he introduced me to Final Fantasy IX, I'd just been playing platforms and beat 'em ups based on popular IPs and just things like that, Donkey Kong Country and all that kind of stuff. And Final Fantasy IX was really like the first time a game presented itself in a way that had a story and epic music and this incredible world that you could explore. And I didn't know until then. I kind of got an inkling of that playing Super Mario RPG. I would say that's kind of on a smaller scale. Final Fantasy IX felt so impossibly big at the time. I would have been maybe 9 or 10 when that game came out.
That's come up a few times with a handful of guests that obviously more popular that guests will cite Final Fantasy VII. It was just, I think, a bigger cultural impact. But I've been surprised how many people talk about 9 during that same generation where that stands out way more to them, or that was the first one that they played. In retrospect, a lot of Final Fantasy heads, it's pretty consistently regarded in the top, 20%. There are like the contrarians that like 9 sucks, right? But most people generally like it.
Right. I can see where the 9 hate would come from because looking back at that era, I think I was just still a little bit too young to appreciate Final Fantasy VII and understand really what it did or even be like aware of it at the time, because the other thing that happened at that time around 7 that would have affected my direct age group was Pokemon finally came over from Japan. Once that came over, that kind of just took over literally everything for a little while. That's all anybody in my class was doing. That's all anything that my friends were doing. We played Pokemon. We watched the anime. We brought the cards to the playgrounds. We got accused by our 4th grade teacher of witchcraft because Pokemon was a tool of the devil. All that classic 90s fun with Pokemon.
I remember my dad being super nervous about anime at first.
Oh, yeah.
He had like heard some stuff and it ended up actually kind of being an issue, but it was on accident. So he checked out Pokemon. I was watching Dragon Ball Z. I would wake up super early and I think it was on 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. on Sundays. Man. I would get up, watch it, go back to bed. And I remember he told me, I looked into this Pokemon stuff and it's all good. I think we're good here. Like, because I had a very strict religious family. So
yes, same.
So we went to Blockbuster one time. So he'd kind of like thought, I've done my research into anime and Japanese cartoons. It's like just kid stuff. It's all good, right? It's a little weird, but their humor's weird, but it's fine. So I'm at Blockbuster. I'm looking at the cartoon stuff because it's dope. And then I'm seeing more Japanese anime stuff show up at the Blockbuster or the Hollywood Video. And the cover for it, I don't know if you know that Ninja Scroll, the anime.
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. It's like one of the, it's like on the Mount Rushmore of some of the early anime stuff. It's up there with Akira.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Very foundational anime. And it's brutal. It's got like RAPE scenes in it. It's got it's got some intense shit. I didn't know this. I just thought like, that looks cool. Right. That guy looks buff. He's got a cool sword. Let's go.
Probably anybody watching anime in the 90s, if you weren't really into it, you probably got into it through either probably Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon were probably the gateway for a lot of people. At least
it was Dragon Ball Z for sure.
Yeah. I saw Pokemon first, but I remember seeing Dragon Ball Z shortly after.
Oh, did you ever see Samurai Pizza Cats?
No, I did not.
They're like a TMNT knockoff, but they're cats.
Interesting.
And they work at a pizza shop.
Interesting. I remember Street Sharks.
Street Sharks, not anime, but awesome.
Yes, not anime, but awesome. Yeah, kind of a similar thing. I was a Power Rangers fan growing up, so I liked Power Rangers as a kid. So that was the Japanese trifecta was Power Rangers, Dragon Ball Z, and Pokemon.
Did you ever watch any of the Power Ranger copycats?
Yeah, there were similar shows. There was one I remember called, I think it was Superhuman Samurai was one of them, if I remember correctly.
I don't know if I saw that one.
And it was a similar type of thing where it was like a guy in a suit fight like monsters and stuff. Beetleborgs was the number one.
I do
Another one
remember
that
Beetleborgs.
yeah,
Yes.
remember distinctly. So there were a couple of them out there like that.
There was another one called VR Troopers, and then
VR
there's
Troopers, yes,
yeah,
yes.
there was one more that I can't remember. And I've always thought about if I didn't have a gaming channel, I would love to do like the wonderful world of. Well, I could do it with games like X spin-offs.
Yes.
But spin-offs is not the right word. Copycats, I guess. That's what they are, right? So they see Power Rangers made all this money, so we're gonna follow the exact same formula, but they're VR troopers now.
Yes. You say it's inspired by in quotations, maybe.
Yeah, inspired quotations.
Yeah.
I saw a video that was basically God of War copies, not the new God of Wars, but the original trilogy.
Oh yeah.
And dude, there was like 30 PS2 games I had never heard of that all looked dope. There's a Conan the Barbarian that plays like old school God of War.
Interesting.
Super metal and he's super bloodied, hot chicks everywhere. I mean, it's Conan,
Hell yeah.
right? And
That doesn't surprise me. There's thousands. There's so many games on the PS2. I haven't even scratched the surface with that console.
That might have been a 360 one. It's somewhere
in there.
The cartoon knockoffs, the Pokemon was, I don't think people, I mean, it's a big thing now. It's a huge franchise now. Kids
Yes.
growing up now, it's been around forever. It's hard to describe how that took over American culture like a wildfire. It was like Pokemon wasn't here, and then all of a sudden, everyone had red and blue, everyone had cards, and it was like I don't know how much money they made, but it would have been bananas.
It was so fast that and this was like pre/early internet times. So the way they like, I don't think there'll ever be something like that again in our lifetimes, just because it was like a perfect storm of everybody kind of got into it at the same time. We didn't have full access to the internet yet. Like nowadays, when something gets popular, like everybody knows about it right away and everything about it is like spoiled. But like early in those days when the only information you had was like gaming magazines or what your friends figured out, you know, you're playing the game when you get home from school, going to school the next day, going out on the playgrounds and like talking about your friends about what they figured out. You know, that's where we first heard like, oh, Mew is under the truck, or that's where I first learned like the item duplication glitch that would fucking destroy your save file or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Now, the PS1,
yes,
it is the greatest console of all time. You're free to disagree with that, but you'll be wrong. And we will forgive that. And it was 9. Now, you said it was the first game that blew you away. Was it the first game you played on the PS1 or just the first one that comes to mind?
it's the first one that comes to mind. So I think I probably got the PS1 because 9 was towards the end of its life cycle. We would have been going into the PlayStation 2. I kind of lumped the PS1 and PS2 together because once I got my PS2, I was playing a lot of the PS1 games on it.
Yeah, yep.
I had a lot of PS1. It showed up at my house similar. Like one day my dad just kind of brought it home and it was like, oh, so I think funny story about this. I think my dad at that age used to work for a company that built like the in-store displays where you would like play the games in the store, right? And so I think he managed to get his hands on a PS1 that they had at the company because they had to ship them the units to like install in the displays that they sent to the stores. And I think they had extra ones when they were finished with their contract. They just let everybody like take them home or whatever.
Yeah.
That shit probably wouldn't fly today, but I remember he brought one home from work. I remember on that console specifically, all over the place in terms of the quality of games on that console. Crash was a big one. We had all 3 Crash games. Going back to Crash 1 is a little bit difficult now. It's kind of rough around the edges, but Crash 2 and Crash 3 are much better. PS1 boasts the greatest kart racer of this era of games in Crash Team Racing. Yes, better than Mario Kart 64, better than Super Mario Kart, better than Diddy Kong Racing. Fight me, anybody.
I'm not going to fight you. I share that opinion.
Crash Team Racing is, I think until we got to like Mario Kart Double Dash, Crash Team Racing was the best kart racer ever made, arguably. That game is incredible. And then there were just other like random titles in there, like Destruction Derby Raw, Spyro the Dragon is in there.
Destruction Derby.
Hell yeah.
Dude, I've gone back and played both. There was 2 of them on the PS1.
Yep.
It definitely don't blow me away like they did as a kid, but I remember seeing actual damage on cars that built up over time.
Oh yeah.
It's just so not normal.
Yes.
We would just, I don't think we ever beat any tracks or actually unlocked any cars. We would just
smash into each other.
Yeah. That's it.
That was the whole premise of the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember Destruction Derby. My dad was kind of like My dad's a big car guy, so he got maybe like a couple of racing games for PS1. I remember Test Drive 5, I think it was a big one. And then I do remember owning Gran Turismo 1 because I remember it came in the double. I think it came in a double case, the thicker case, if I remember correctly. Or maybe it was Gran Turismo 2. I owned one of the Gran Turismos on PlayStation 1. And I don't think I was old enough at the time to appreciate that because that's like a full-blown, that's a racing sim. That's a little more intense than, like kart racing or destruction derby or even like I would say Test Drive 5 is a little bit more of like an arcade racer. I don't think I was quite ready for the sim level of Gran Turismo. Looking back now, I was like, holy shit, I had Gran Turismo on the PS1 as a kid growing up. Like, that's insane.
I was going to bring that up. My assumption would have been you're a little young at this time to understand because I was older than you in playing Gran Turismo around the same time.
Right. I think my favorite description of Gran Turismo was that it was just like, it was a race car RPG. And I really like that description about it because it kind of is.
Yeah. I just remember renting Gran Turismo, expecting an arcade racer because I played a lot of Ridge Racer.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
All of the Ridge Racers up to that point. I forget which ones they were at the time. It probably would have been Ridge Racer 1, 2, and maybe Type 4 would have been out by then because Gran Turismo 2 came out towards the end of the console's life cycle. I forget the exact date. Long story short, I was like, what the fuck is this? I have to do all this work to get a license before I can even buy a car, before I can even race? No, this is America. I want my entertainment right now.
Right.
And I just totally missed the boat, did not understand what I had.
Right. And now when you go back to it, you're like, oh my God, these games have so much content in them. Like, it's insane.
And the fact that they pulled those games off on the PlayStation 1 is
crazy. And how they looked. That's
stuff.
Wizard stuff for sure.
During this area, PS1, PS2, what stuff sticks out the most? So you're obviously a full-on gamer. Are you reading magazines all the time, keeping up with what's coming out, getting excited for new releases, or are you just sort of getting what you're getting and enjoying it?
Yeah, I would say I just kind of started to become aware of the industry around this time because I would say probably from 91 till 2000, that era, I didn't really grasp the concept of different console generations. So I had a Super Nintendo, a PlayStation 1, a Nintendo 64 kind of all at the same time. And I would jump back and forth between them and I'd play all of them. So I didn't really understand that, they were kind of like separate things and how the technology was advancing. And then once I got to 9 and started to become a little more aware of the games I was playing, I had a subscription to Nintendo Power. And I think it was Game Informer around back then. Did I have early Game Informer subscription too? So that's when I started to become aware of things that were coming out. I would say it was still firmly through the lens of Nintendo because I did have the Nintendo Power subscription. So that was a lot of the stuff I was aware of. But I was becoming aware and like anticipating more things that were coming out. And you were starting to see more advertising for video games on television. At least I was becoming more aware of it because that was after 9 came out and then Final Fantasy X came out. I remember there was a huge marketing blitz for the launch of Kingdom Hearts 1 when I got my PS2 because, they were pushing, it's the Final Fantasy VII guys and now it's Disney. And Disney was just coming off the tail end of the Disney Renaissance where they just basically took over the 90s with all the movies they put out. I was starting to become more aware of it. It was around this time too, before we, Kingdom Hearts kind of gets thrown in there and derails the whole thing. The Game Boy Advance came out and I would consider, I think probably alongside the PS2, the Game Boy Advance a foundational console for me. We had the original Game Boys and my cousin and I took our Game Boys everywhere and we played games, and the Game Boy was mostly for Pokemon, but there were other games on the Game Boy Advance that I consider alongside Final Fantasy IX some foundational games, especially the games that came over from Japan that were worked on by Intelligent Systems. So that would be the Advance Wars series of games and Fire Emblem for the first time. I adored those games so much. Advance Wars to this day is one of my favorite games, one of my favorite franchises, and I'm still playing every single Fire Emblem game that comes out to this day.
Yeah, and bring up you brought this up when we talked on your show, the Advanced Wars fan, not a remaster, but they kind of combined games, created online play.
Yeah.
Had a whole community.
There were 2 Advance Wars games on the GBA. So there's Advance Wars and Advance Wars Black Hole Rising. You could kind of count them as one game because the second one was just kind of a tuned repackage of the first game with like extra maps and a new campaign and some new commanding officers and stuff. And then there was Dual Strike on the DS. And then there was Days of Ruin on the DS. And Days of Ruin kind of destroyed the franchise because they tried to go like the whole... Days of Ruin is interesting because I played it again during the pandemic. And Days of Ruin is about like, oh, a meteor hits the planet and then a pandemic like wipes out all life on the planet. And I was like, oh, this is kind of topical as to what's going on right now. So the Advance Wars community is one of the smaller video game communities, but they're very dedicated. And they managed to take all of the information, all the data from like the source code of those games. And they created something called Advance Wars by Web. So it's Advance Wars BY Web. Basically a version of Advance Wars you can play against other people all over the world in your browser. I likened it to the early days of smartphone apps when you could play Words with Friends, right? And you would spell your word and then it would send it over to your friend and then they could respond and spell their word. Usually to play Advance Wars against your friends, you had to have like a link cable. You had to sit there and like play across the thing. And Advance Wars can be a pretty lengthy game. It's a tactics game. It's a strategy game. So you can take a long time like taking turns or like plotting out your strategy. So they implemented Advance Wars by Web in a way that you could play against other people and you could play it on your guys' time and you could like play your turn and then it would send to your opponent and then they would play their turn. And then you could play it in that way and games could last several days or things like that. And it's got a really robust community. They have like a ranking ELO system and they have tournaments and they have like a Grandmaster ladder. So there are Grandmaster Advance Wars players out there that are dedicated to their craft. And playing the game at like a basic level, just playing the campaign against the AI it's kind of stupid is fun. But if you play that and then watch high level competitive Advance Wars play, it's some of the craziest shit you will ever see. It's insane.
Yeah, you brought this up and I remember poking around at it, and I think the Words with Friends formula is it makes me want to try getting into it basically because it sounds fun.
Yes.
But I'm also worried it's going to take a lot of time. They got to learn all this stuff. I'm watching I recommend anyone to go look at the actual website. It's pretty awesome. They have free to play up to 16 players. They have these like huge, I didn't realize Advanced Wars has these like huge maps with regions and it looks like there's tons of players.
Yep.
Custom design maps. They have ranked league. Yeah, it's a full thing.
Yeah, the preferred way to play is definitely the fair way to play is you play on mirrored maps that don't give anybody like an inherent advantage. They try to make it as fair as possible. It's not based on any of the one games. They kind of take the best parts of 1, 2, and Dual Strike, and they found a way to kind of combine all those elements together and took like the best mechanics from all those games and managed to combine them all together into one game that you can play online with people. So I admire it from afar. I'll watch some people play and I've watched some tournaments and stuff. I'm not smart enough to be able to play it competitively. It's worth mentioning that game is alive and well, considering that we just got the remakes on the Switch for 1 and 2 that I guess weren't received that well, which is kind of disappointing because I bought them and I loved them. I thought they were great, faithful remakes, but it's one of those games that you wouldn't expect to have like a hardcore fan base that did all this extra work, and they have. So I love Advance Wars. That community is awesome.
I'm glad that's there. I'm glad you brought it up. I would have never known. Advance Wars was this game on Game Boy. I remember thinking it looked cool. Some friends played it. You're exactly right. I wouldn't have guessed that it's one of these communities that have revived it in this way, but that's some of my favorite stuff to find. Even though I'm probably not going to play it, I find it super interesting that these communities pop up in the way that different games, for example, I think we talked about this, or it might have been with another guest, Crimson Echoes or Flames of Eternity, the fan mod that bridges Chrono Trigger to Chrono Cross.
Oh yeah, we did talk about that
game.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy that people go out and like do this stuff. I just love that the rabbit hole of gaming goes deep, and basically not every game, but lots of games, or maybe you could say genres, tend to have these different types of communities, and they sort of organize in different ways. It's like music. Whatever you're into, you can just keep going deeper and deeper and find more stuff. If you're into RTS games, I bet I'm not into them, but I bet there's a whole wonderful world of like cool indie RTS shit on Steam and fan games and hacks that goes as deep as you want to go.
Yeah, I know specifically on the Fire Emblem and Advance Wars side too, the communities around both those games, and they tend to overlap because they're very similar. This is kind of design style. They're both of that 2000s era. They share similar art direction. There are tons of fan mods and custom games. Like the communities have taken those games apart and understand how they work so well, and have built like randomizer engines. You can have like randomizer runs and all this crazy stuff around games that they're on the Game Boy Advance. And I'd be willing to bet that not a lot of people probably think about them day to day in the way that they think about a lot of other games. And yeah, it's amazing that you can just kind of maybe look at any game and think of that it has some kind of community around it of people that are either speedrunning it or making new content around it or doing something creative like it, like putting it in a web-based browser to play. Yeah, that's the part about games I absolutely love the most.
It's an endless interest because there are so many games already. There are so many genres. There's so much history. Like YouTube will never fill up with gaming content. You can always look at similar things from a different angle. I mean, the amount of Silent Hill 2 remake content that I have consumed in the last like month or whatever it came out, it's all these people talking about the same game, which is not a one-to-one remake, but very similar to the original game, which already has a bajillion hours of content on it. And I find it all entertaining. And I love like seeing different people's takes on it. The modding scene is crazy. And that obviously it's a little bit of a bigger game. It sold really well. It's a cult classic, but this is everywhere. It's sometimes just hard to you see something like, for me, I look at that, I'm like, that's cool. But there are endless doors in this infinite back rooms of video game interest, and I only have so much time. So then you have to decide like, is this worth my time, or am I interested enough? And I was on the edge when you brought it up before, and looking at it again, I'm on the edge trying to think of, I know I could play with you, but if I had like 5 friends that played this consistently, then maybe it would be, I might try to like get good at this and compete with my friends. I wanted to ask you though, from the very beginning, you're into games, you're starting to become aware of the industry, and then you run into Kingdom Hearts, which has become your Suikoden 2 or your Final Fantasy 7 or whatever, like that game, that series. Everybody has the one, maybe 2, right?
Yeah.
Were you hyped for Kingdom Hearts leading up to? Were you starting to read in like from the very get-go, or was it something you just picked up, didn't know what you were getting, and then fell in love with it?
Again, it was one of those games that I played at my cousin's house first, but I'd started seeing the advertising around it. And like you said, this is my Suikoden 2. The Kingdom Hearts is by far and away my favorite franchise of video games. It's the franchise that encapsulates what I love about video games the most. It's most representative of what I think video games should be. So yeah, I remember seeing the advertising around it because, like I said, Disney made a really big push. The allure of Final Fantasy VII was still around at that time, and Final Fantasy X had just come out, and that was gigantic. I remember, for as big as people tell me 7 was, 10 was kind of my 7. I didn't own 10 and I didn't play it till much later, but I remember 10 coming out, and that was a huge deal. Like, that blew people's freaking minds. I think people saw the jump from 9 to 10 and was like, 9 was a year ago, and now we're getting something like Final Fantasy X. Like, that's absolutely insane.
Dude, sorry to interrupt you, but I saw this meme that was, and I didn't even believe it, and I should have known it was true because it didn't seem real. I showed Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy X side by side, like 2 videos going.
Yeah.
And it said these games are 4 or 5 years apart. Like, the numbers seemed way too small. I remember thinking, there's no way. Let me look at the release dates. Oh, shit, they're right.
Yeah.
Because 4 or 5 years now to us is, like, most games take that long just to be made. And they went from 7 to 10. 7 was 97, right?
Yes.
The very beginning of 97, January 31st. Okay. So 97, and then 10 was,
2001.
2001. So 4 years.
And some change. Some change. Yeah.
That is batshit insane.
That is insane. Yeah, that's why in a lot of my Kingdom Hearts scripts, I talk about how the late 90s and early 2000s, Square was just dominating. They were blowing people out of the water with the things that they were doing, because in Final Fantasy X, we had The Spirits Within came out. That was the kind of that Final Fantasy movie that didn't do great, but it still visually pushed it still visually pushed the envelope. I think it was indicative of what Square was doing at the time. So yeah, I first saw Kingdom Hearts at my cousin's house again. I was aware of it though, and it was a game that I wanted because I saw the advertising. I was a big Disney fan growing up. Lion King was the first movie I ever saw in theaters. And so I remember seeing all the Disney classics growing up: Lion King, Mulan, Hercules, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, all those from the Disney Renaissance era. And I was familiar with Squaresoft as a company because of Final Fantasy IX. So I was like, oh, a game that has Disney elements from the movies I love, and it's by the same people that made Final Fantasy IX. That to me was a no-brainer. Like that was my kid logic. I was like, that's a no-brainer. So I ended up getting Kingdom Hearts 1, and I absolutely loved it. But I remember I didn't beat it for a long time for whatever reason. I think I got stuck on like the second to last level, and I just kind of fell off of it because there were just so many other PS2 games that like were coming out and playing, and I was starting to get a little bit more because my parents knew I liked games, so I was starting to get not just one or two games for birthdays or Christmas, so I'd get a handful of games that I could pick out, or I would ask for money and just be able to go and buy games. And I was playing a ton of other stuff in between like Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2. I remember fell in love with Koei Tecmo's Dynasty Warriors franchise. Like to this day, Dynasty Warriors is like one of my guilty pleasures. I fucking love me some Muso Dynasty Warriors games, just going out there being a dude and killing like 1,000 dudes on a battlefield.
That's another subgenre I've never got into, but every once in a while I'll poke around on YouTube or Steam. There's so many Muso games, and some of them look awesome.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that any of them are like deeper or satisfying to play, but like if you're just like pissed off at work one day and you come home and you just pop in a Muso game and just like kill 1,000 dudes.
Did you ever play the Zelda one?
Stress reliever. Hyrule Warriors? No, I did not. I did play the Fire Emblem one though. They came out with Fire Emblem Warriors, and I did play that one.
I didn't even know there was a Fire Emblem one.
Yeah. So they did the two. They did Hyrule Warriors, and then they did Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and then they did Fire Emblem Warriors, and then they did the one based off of Three Houses called Three Hopes. It
actually looks pretty cool. And because the art style is kind of stayed the same, even though it's a little bit older, it still looks cool.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it the depths of anything really. I mean, those games are pretty shallow, but for what they are, they're a guilty pleasure. I love them. I think they're very enjoyable.
So you love Kingdom Hearts 1 from the jump.
Yep.
But did Kingdom Hearts, was it immediately your favorite franchise, or did the superior Kingdom Hearts 2 turn you?
Yeah, it took some time. I think it was really when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out that I fully got on board with the franchise, because I played Kingdom Hearts 1. I did eventually go back and beat it, and then it was just kind of a game that it did fade into the background for a while, just because, again, so many titles on the PS2, like so many games that I can't possibly remember. Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, Star Wars Battlefront 2. This was also the start of the time around like Call of Duty 2, Call of Duty Big Red 1, Medal of Honor, Rising Sun. So some of the shooters that I was starting to be allowed to play. I remember having Soul Calibur 2 on the PlayStation 2, I think. So I was getting a little bit into fighters. So the PlayStation 2 was really where my experience with different games was starting to kind of grow. I was branching out into different things and playing fighters and shooters and just going away from just RPGs and platforms, which is kind of the only thing that I known for like 10 years of my life. So yeah, I remember I wasn't even aware that Kingdom Hearts 2 came out in 2006, I think it was. It was almost 4 or 5 years after the first game. And I remember just seeing it on a shelf in Best Buy, and I was like, oh, they came out with a second one. I enjoyed the first one. I think I just picked it up on a whim and played it. And the jump from Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts 2 is incredible. I think Kingdom Hearts 2 is up there. You talk about some of like the best sequels of all time in video games. People will talk about like Halo 2 or Mass Effect 2 or games of that stature where the sequels were so incredible. They built so much off of what the first games did that they've kind of become iconic and legendary. That was Kingdom Hearts 2. Kingdom Hearts 2 built so much off of what the first game did that to me, to this day, I still think it's the definitive experience for the entire series. And this might be a controversial take too, depending on how much you like Final Fantasy X. I think Kingdom Hearts 2 is Square's best game on the PlayStation 2. It's that good.
I'm a sympathetic audience because I hated 10 for a very long time. And I replayed it, and I have to admit there are things about it that are better than I initially gave it credit for.
Yes.
10 and 16 are the two best worst Final Fantasies. Meaning there's things about them I absolutely love, and then there's parts about it I absolutely hate. I think 16 I love. There's more that I love.
Right.
And I really like Kingdom Hearts 2 a lot. I lean to the Final Fantasy franchise more than the Kingdom Hearts franchise because I've only played the console ones. But I wouldn't say I'd put up a huge fight. Kingdom Hearts 2 is really, really good. It made me love Kingdom Hearts. Not enough to go handheld because I just wasn't into handhelds.
I don't blame you.
Enough. Like, there's only so much money to go around. It's like I get a handheld when I was older, or I can just get more games for whatever I have.
Right.
Never was attracted to the handheld thing. So I never played any of the other games, but that's why I was so excited for Kingdom Hearts 3 because I loved 2. Like, 1 was good, but 2, I did the whole completionist thing, fell in love with it.
Oh, yeah.
Was still very invested in the story. Like, it was definitely weird, but I kind of made sense of it, and there was enough mystery of what's going on. I want to find out all the stuff that doesn't make sense yet. And then, yeah, 3 just, it was too much of a gap. I didn't follow the series. But that's all to say that Kingdom Hearts 2 is, I think, unanimously, there's nothing unanimous, but pretty damn close, regarded as good.
Yes.
Nobody says it's shit. Nobody says it's shit unless they just want to hate on Kingdom Hearts.
Right. And amongst the fans too, amongst the community, it's a pretty general consensus that that's kind of the peak experience of the series. And
that doesn't surprise me.
To circle back on 10, I hated 10 for a different reason. I respect and like 10 now for what it did. I found things to love about it. I mostly hated 10 because I felt it always dominated the conversation over Final Fantasy 9 because 9 came before, and 9 was on inferior hardware, and 9 was designed to be a celebration of the series before they moved on to Final Fantasy 10. And I felt that whenever anybody was talking about Final Fantasy from that era, they were just like, "Oh, it's 7, it's 10." And me loving 9, I just felt like 10 dominated the conversation so much that I was just like, I kind of had like a grudge against it. I've learned to let go a little bit, but yeah, Kingdom Hearts 2 is it's one of the best PS2 games. I think mechanically it holds up very, very well even today. I mean, I played it through it again this year on the Steam collection when it came out, and it holds up very well to what you would expect a modern action RPG to play like comparable to like your Devil May Cry's or even to Final Fantasy 16. That vein, they decided to take that game in, and I agree with you. There are more things that I love about 16 that I'm pro 16. So
good, we're agreed. I could also turn this into a 16 conversation because I have thoughts on that. But did you go straight from 2 and follow Kingdom Hearts to the handhelds immediately, or did you have a break, go back and play them? Like, were you in it so deep that when they started going handheld, yep, I'm going to keep going with the series?
Yeah. So 2 was the game that really got me into the series. The next game that was coming out was Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep on the PlayStation Portable. This was the time the PlayStation Portable was coming out. I remember cutting lawns that summer and saving up enough money to buy the PlayStation Portable just to play Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep.
You were all in, baby.
I was in.
Yeah.
Just to talk a little bit about that, I hated Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep on the PSP. It was a terrible experience, and I thought it was just me, but looking back, it was a pretty terrible experience because Birth by Sleep has this mechanics where after you do enough combos and magic and stuff, it had a mechanic called form change, where depending on what inputs and what attacks you did, you would transform into like a different form that did something, whether it was like more focused on attack or magic. And there was an animation that would play every time you would go into the form change. For whatever reason, the hardware of the PSP just couldn't handle that animation and going into the form change. So anytime that happened, the game would pause in that animation for maybe like 7 to 8 seconds. And I played and the form changes can happen multiple times in a battle, like a 2 or 3 minute battle. I played the entire game that way, and I just remember it leaving like, I loved the story, I loved the characters, but that specific thing, having to play it in such a shitty way on the PSP, where it was clearly, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was not optimized. I don't know if I just didn't have an SD card to put into the PSP and like install the game. I truly didn't know. It was a terrible experience. Luckily, they ported that game and kind of touched up in HD and put it on the collection so you could play it on console. And playing it on console, I have a much more favorable opinion of that game now because I think it's better to play it on console. It still has some of its PSP jank, but on console, that game is much better.
In terms of like story characters, is it a letdown, or is it just that the loading time is why? That's what it's
It
making.
was just the loading time thing.
Okay.
In terms of the story and the characters, it introduced an entire new element. So Birth by Sleep takes place 10 years before Kingdom Hearts 1, and it introduces a lot of interesting
Who's
new
the main
plot
character?
elements. So there are three main characters in Birth by Sleep. In classic Nomura, and there are three different story paths you can play in typical Nomura fashion, right? Birth by Sleep follows the adventures of characters called Terra, Aqua, and Ventus, based on the elements, obviously earth, water, wind.
Okay.
They were training to be like Keyblade masters, essentially. Birth by Sleep introduces the overarching villain of the first arc of the series, Master Xehanort, who's infamous even among video games today as being kind of this ridiculous old man who has plots and plans that like he had plans for every eventuality. But that game is very much about these three friends kind of being manipulated by Master Xehanort. Those events kind of tie into things that happen in Kingdom Hearts 1 and set up the rest of the series going forward. So it's a very pivotal entry in the entire series as a whole. I think the story is very well done. The way that they have you play kind of each character's route to get the full story and then kind of tie it all up in the end. And then in the end, it ends in tragedy. All these characters, terrible things happen to these characters. It's not a happy ending game at all.
So for those who are listening, the PC re-release version, watching some YouTube footage, looks really good. Like it looks basically as good as a PS2 game. And it has Roxas at the very end, it looks like. But he's wearing like some alien costume. So I'm like, okay. Anyway, I'm intrigued for sure. I had no idea there was 3 new characters.
Yeah, so that is Ventus. He looks like Roxas.
Oh.
They look identical.
And is there a lore reason for that?
Yes, there are lore reasons for that.
At least there's a reason for that.
Yes. So.
All right. And what's after Birth by Sleep?
So the other 2 mobile games were Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2 and Kingdom Hearts Recoded. 358 Days Over 2 was a game that focused on Roxas and his time that he spent with Organization 13.
So that's pre Kingdom Hearts 2 still.
So there's a year of time in between Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2. And that's when 358 Days takes place in that year jump. Chain of Memories, the Game Boy Advance game, also takes place during that time. But you don't have to play Chain of Memories before you play 2. It's not really that essential. So that game follows Roxas and his time in the organization. And that does have some important lore stuff in it as well. That game doesn't play the greatest. They really had to fight the DS hardware. The goal for 358 Days was to have a comparable Kingdom Hearts experience like how they had Kingdom Hearts 1 on the DS. And that's a pretty tall order considering the processing power of the Nintendo DS. And they had a really hard time with that. It's the reason why that game's so rough that they couldn't put the game on the HD collections when they released them. They just remastered the cutscenes and put the cutscenes out so you could watch them and get that story information. That's one of those games that's the only way to play it is on the original DS hardware. It's not a very expensive game if you want to go that route, but it just kind of sucks that that's the only way it's playable.
It looks like, I just looked for some footage of it in 4K. There is an unofficial HD remaster on GitHub.
Yeah, I think it's called Melon.
Yes.
The Melon mod or
Melon Mix.
Melon Mix, yeah.
Melon Mix. So you can play semi-ethical, maybe unethical, depending on who your feelings version of this on the computer.
I would say it's ethical because they made the cutscenes available. They haven't made the game available to play. So I would say it's ethical. At least for me, I've bought in every version of this game of all these games that have ever come out. So I've given them enough money that I would not feel guilty about playing it. But yeah, so 358 Days was that story, and it ties into some interesting things in between 1 and 2. And then Recoded is a remake of a Japanese exclusive mobile game that was only in Japan.
Wait, so they have on the same update, they have a section on this YouTube video called Recoded. So maybe this Melon Mix includes Recoded?
It might. It very well might.
But it's actually a separate game. Okay.
Yeah. They did the same thing in the HD collections as they did with 358. They included the cutscenes. Recoded doesn't really add anything significant to the story. The original Japanese mobile experience was Kingdom Hearts coded, and it was on one of the earliest iterations of like a first generation Japanese smartphone that they got out there. And there's some footage that exists of the original Kingdom Hearts coded experience. It was more of like a side scrolling type deal, and they took it and they made a whole DS game around it. Recoded does function much better than 358 Days. I think it was made by the same team. And I would argue that the gameplay in Recoded is actually pretty good in terms of the systems that you use to customize the game. It is a very customizable experience in terms of difficulty and modifiers and things like that. There's a very robust, I would say, customization feature built into the game that you can use to like tweak different settings for challenge runs or make it easier, make it harder on yourself. So in that terms, I think Recoded is really cool. And this is the thing that everybody kind of makes fun of Kingdom Hearts for, right? Is why would they put all this lore stuff on like all these separate consoles that you have to buy and play from Kingdom Hearts 2? Nomura had more of the story he wanted to tell, but at the time, Square Enix was kind of going through some shit. I mean, this was the time where Final Fantasy 13 was coming out, and that was kind of a big disaster for them. They were relying on a lot of handheld. They leaned really heavily into the handhelds to make up some of the numbers that, you know, while they were waiting for Final Fantasy. The wait for Final Fantasy 13 was insane, and then they made 2 more games off that, and then they tried to build the Fabula Nova Crystallis around it.
Yeah, I bought 13.2 or 13.3.
Yeah,
because it was like $2 on Steam.
Yep, and then they had Type Zero. That was a game in there for that too, I believe. Zero.
Yeah.
Yes. They developed the Crystal Tools engine, which was just a disaster. That engine was so difficult to develop games with that they eventually switched over to the Luminous engine. That engine's kind of responsible for the demise of Versus 13 that eventually turned into 15. So there's a whole bunch of dominoes that happened during this time of Square Enix's history that necessitated these Kingdom Hearts games existing. They leaned really heavily into the handheld market to keep money coming in, and this is where they put, because they put a shit ton of their RPGs on the DS. Like there are tons of PSP and DS ports of so many Final Fantasy games, and I know Chrono Trigger was on the DS, and I think it was like they put out like 50 games on the DS and the PSP to just keep money coming in while they were working on their big flagship franchises. Yeah, Square was a shit show in the late 2000s.
They've always been like on top of the world, shit show. On top of the world, shit show. That's kind of been their MO for a while. I mean, it's very simplified, but there's a pattern there. Now, with Kingdom Hearts, there's some things that you're like, oh, what do I want to ask? There's so many things I want to ask because you obviously like balls deep into Kingdom Hearts.
I've been in the deep end, yeah.
I want to go back a little bit. Is there anything interesting for people who aren't as knowledgeable as you about how the fuck did Square and Disney even come together, and how did this idea even get greenlit in the first place?
Yes. So similar to the creation of Final Fantasy, you know, we have that romanticized version of, oh, it was going to be Sakaguchi's last game, and that's why they call it Final Fantasy, and Square was going to go under, and Sakaguchi was going to leave the industry if it didn't succeed. And really the true story is they just wanted to call a game FF and have that be the abbreviation, right? So not quite as romanticized as all that. The romanticized version, or at least the version that I've told people on my series of episodes, is it all goes back to Mario 64, right? Everything goes back to Mario 64. Everything goes back to Mario because that's just how it was. Rightfully so, because when Mario 64 came out, it kind of blew everybody's fucking mind at the time, like how incredible that game was. It did. Yeah. People shit their pants when that game came out. Sakaguchi did that. He saw this game and thought it was incredible. So Sakaguchi and Shinji Hashimoto were like having lunch, and they were discussing they wanted to make a game like Mario 64 that had the same kind of exploration that Mario 64 did in 3 dimensions, the same type of gameplay. They were kind of spitballing ideas. The only problem they had was we can't put out a game like that because we can't compete with character of Mario's caliber, right? If you put out a Mario 64 clone out there, it's just going to get annihilated, right? Like nobody could do what Nintendo did with that game for a long time. They were spitballing ideas. They're like, what characters could we use to like be able to compete with Mario? And at the time, the only characters they thought that had the kind of identification power that Mario did was Disney characters, because they just come off their, you know, were the talent of the Disney Renaissance. And that's kind of where this idea kind of started. The story goes that Tetsuya Nomura just happened to be like walking by and overheard this conversation, and he kind of popped in and volunteered to like direct or lead this project if it ever got off the ground. And they agreed to let him do that. And they kind of started working on some stuff. I guess at the time, Square and Disney in Japan shared a building. And Shinji Hashimoto got into an elevator and found himself in an elevator ride with a Disney executive that worked there. And he pitched him this idea of this 3D game like Mario 64 that would have Disney characters and leverage some of the stuff that Square did with Final Fantasy to make this Mario 64-esque game. And the Disney executive thought it was a great. This is why in business school they tell you to always practice your elevator pitch, because you never know who you're going to find yourself in an elevator with, and it might be your only chance to pitch them a crazy idea that you have. And so that was kind of the birth of Kingdom Hearts, and from there they started hashing out the details. Square wanted Mickey Mouse to be the main character, and for whatever reason, Disney was pushing really hard for Donald Duck to be the main character. I don't really see the logic in that. Nomura was the one who came up with the idea for an original character supported by the Disney characters, and he went home. He designed Sora. Sora's original design, if you want to look it up, is pretty wild, almost like a amorphous like lion cub, and he had like a chainsaw sword. It was a pretty crazy design. Very Nomura when you look at it. He had like a tail too, so he looked very much like a lion cub. Yeah, Nomura pitched this character to Disney, and they weren't too keen on him like having a chainsaw sword. And Square was afraid that he looked a little too much like Zidane from Final Fantasy IX. That's when he went home, and in the course of one night, he redesigned Sora into the classic design we know him from in Kingdom Hearts 1, the big yellow shoes and the red and the white jumpsuit to emulate the colors of Mickey Mouse. And he ended up becoming the main character. So,
are you familiar with the PS2 beat 'em up, The Bouncer?
I've heard it referenced. Yes, the guy looks kind of like Sora.
Well, no, it doesn't look. I don't know if there's any official stuff, but I've heard a lot of people say that they basically just retconned the Bouncer design into Sora. And if you look at him, I mean, I can kind of see it.
I think it's very possible. I think the Bouncer design looks a little bit more like his Kingdom Hearts 2 design. The belt around the neck is classic. That's classic Nomura for sure. And then just looking at the Wikipedia for this game, a lot of the same people did work on it. So Nomura was the artist. Shinji Hashimoto was the producer. So these were probably in development around the same time, I would imagine. So it wouldn't surprise me if a little bit of design from one influenced the other at all.
Like, I see this and I'm like, there's no way Nomura is designing both these people. There's no way he wasn't. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Look at that picture.
Oh yeah.
That's Sora, dude.
Yeah. I see a little bit of squall in there too. Like maybe a little bit in the face. Yeah.
Squall.
So there might be a little bit in there. And they Squall's obviously in the first Kingdom Hearts game too. So I mean, a lot of this stuff was probably being worked on at the same time. Nomura is infamous for having like 8 projects that he's working on at one time. So that wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I'm sure there was some bleed over and stuff for sure.
I think it's cool. It's like maybe Nomura had some ideas where he was linking them. It's not official canon or anything, or just like kind of similar themes or backstories they both had. Or it would be cool to talk to him if he could have an interview and be like, you were designing these games around the same time. These characters are like really familiar. What were you referencing? What were you being inspired by? What were you thinking about? Because I think Sora and I forget the guy in the Bouncer's name, but they probably have a common ancestor.
They might,
inspiration. Yeah.
It'd be cool if they found a way to make him show up in one of the games.
Yeah, that would be cool. The Bouncer also, for those who haven't played it, it's not great.
No, it's not.
I've played it a few times. I mean, it's cool because I remember it blowing my mind, at least visually, but it doesn't play super great. It's a very awkward beat 'em up, essentially.
It's got middling review scores. Just checking the Wikipedia page. It's 66 on Metacritic, so not the greatest thing.
Not the greatest. So they do the elevator pitch. Yeah. They start talking about it. They start working out the details. Sora had a chainsaw sword, a tail. Got rid of that. We got to the yellow boots. What happens after that?
Really, just kind of goes into production there. They pick the worlds that they're gonna decide to put in the game. That came together pretty easily based on my understanding. I'm sure there were ones that they wanted to include, probably some of their more popular titles, Aladdin, Hercules, those were shoo-ins for sure. Kingdom Hearts 1's the only game where the Tarzan level shows up, because after that, rights revert back to whoever owns the rights for Tarzan, and
I
they
did
can
not
just
know
never
that.
use
So
it ever
Disney
again.
can't do any more Tarzan?
No, somebody owns the rights to Tarzan, and they gave it to him for like this brief period of time, and I don't know what happened. The Tarzan people like took the rights back or just won't let them do anything else with it. They seem to be very protective of that IP based on what little information research I did on it.
It looks like Sony Pictures owns it now after acquiring them from the estate of Edgar Rice Burroughs in September.
That's the guy.
That was 2022.
Yeah, the movie is based off of the novel written by that guy, I believe is what it is.
Oh, so I looked up on Reddit, and here's the first person saying a similar thing. The rumors started when the Tarzan world wasn't included in Kingdom Hearts 2. People were making assumptions Disney lost the rights because they let Square use the IP in their game without permission. Yeah. That's not correct. Edgar Rice owns the rights to the original Tarzan.
I think it's similar to how the Tolkien estate like controls all the Lord of the Rings stuff, and they decide who can do stuff with that. I'm sure it's a similar thing.
Is there any stuff from being all in that Nomura has talked about that was cut during this time when they had to do all of these handheld games, where it was like he wanted to do something bigger or wanted characters, and he's openly said we had to cut this because we're doing all this handheld stuff?
Yeah, there were a couple. So early on, basically since Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2. So you have to go back to the Disney acquisition of Pixar. And when Disney bought Pixar, he had wanted to do a Toy Story level for a really long time. Like that was something that he really wanted to do. I think he had a working concept for a Toy Story level in Kingdom Hearts 2, but whether the merger with Pixar hadn't gone through yet or it was still too new, Disney just didn't want that happening. That level would eventually come to fruition in Kingdom Hearts 3. It's probably it's probably that game's most iconic world for sure. He had tried for several games to put a Pinocchio world in there that wasn't just you being swallowed by the whale in space. Because that was basically the Pinocchio level, was just you inside of a whale for the first couple games that level appeared. And eventually they did get the full Pinocchio world in Dream Drop Distance for the 3DS, I believe. There's a lot of stuff just about how, like I said, during this time when they made the 3 handheld games, Square was kind of a mess, kind of in shambles because of 13. And Nomura was also like trying to work on Versus 13, and we all know that game got turned into Final Fantasy 15. I learned a lot more about Nomura as like a director and a team leader from the research that I did. He really liked to keep his teams together. Like he wanted to have the same people working on every single title, basically. That's kind of like where the Osaka team came in, and the Osaka team did Birth by Sleep. He would always make sure that his teams were always busy so he didn't lose his people because he was comfortable working with his people. And that's who he wanted to work with. And I think that's pretty rare for video games because usually when dev teams finish something, they get split up and put on other projects. But he had enough pull there where he was always having his people assigned to the projects that like he was working on so he could keep his teams together because they were doing all the Kingdom Hearts stuff. They were doing, I think the first Dissidia game they did, they were working on The World Ends With You. So he had his guys like working on stuff all the time so that when he needed his core team to work on the high priority games like Kingdom Hearts, he always had them and they just didn't get cannibalized to the other projects that Square was working on at the time.
It seemed like you, because you've been researching Nomura and this time, and because your love of Kingdom Hearts, you're very familiar with this time period.
Yes.
I've done a little bit of diving into what happened and why 13 went to 15. 13 Versus went to 15.
Yes.
What is your understanding of what happened there?
So that was always Nomura's dream project. And from what we've seen of it, it looks like it was going to be a Final Fantasy game that was more in the vein of Kingdom Hearts with its combat and its art style. Basically everything with my understanding of reading interviews and the stuff that he can talk about, because he's alluded to stuff in interviews that there's stuff he can't talk about because of the game getting axed or retransformed into 15. And a lot of the early concept art you see from Versus 13 like has Noctis and has a lot of the elements that you come to see in 15. My understanding is that it seems to me that it was really the problem of 2 things. I think the PlayStation 3, as has been documented, was notoriously difficult to develop for with the way its system architecture was implemented. That's my understanding. And it seemed that Japanese developers in general did not make the transition from like the PS2 era to the PS3 era very well. I don't know if that was exclusive to Square Enix, but I remember kind of reading about, as they were talking about that time period, that was rough. That was a rough jump for the Japanese developers over there. I don't know if that was just because of the PS3 hardware. I don't know what was going on, but for whatever reason, like they knew that the PS3 was hard to develop for it. So this was the time that they decided to build their own in-house engine, which would become the Crystal Tools engine that they were going to build Final Fantasy 13 and the Fabula Nova Crystallis series of games. And that's the engine that Versus 13 was going to be built in as well. Nomura had all of as much work as he could do on Versus 13 done. They were waiting for such a long time for the engine to be ready to build that game, for the tools they're going to use to build that game. And when the engine came out, I just think Versus 13 was so far behind. It was at this time that I feel Square Enix was becoming more corporatized. And I think the video game industry in general was going through this corporatization, right? People were figuring out how much money could be made in video games.
Yeah.
And I think there was less patience at the top in management for the things that Nomura was doing, because I look at Nomura as he's a student of Hironobu Sakaguchi, right? And Sakaguchi basically did whatever the fuck he wanted at Square. He was a king, right? He could be. He was making Final Fantasy. I always view, and I still to this day, I view Nomura as like that last kind of bastion of Sakaguchi's creativity and the way of doing things at a highly corporatized Square Enix. You know how creative is when you're in a highly corporatized structure. They're always going to clash. So I think just combined with the changes that Square was going through, how awful that development engine was. Like it's amazing we got Final Fantasy 13 out of that engine. It's from what I've heard, it's a disaster. And I just think they were just tired of that project, and they were just like, enough time had gone on between Final Fantasy 13 and 15 that they were like, Versus 13 is not really a priority anymore. Let's cannibalize this and make it into 15. So I think there are just so many different factors that game just was set up to fail from the start, it feels like.
How much have you looked into what the plot of Versus 13 and what they were going for carried over to what we got in 15, particularly for those who haven't played 15? This happens with a lot of games, and this happened with many Square games. Xenogears is like this. There's a certain point you get to in 15 where you go to like a new world map, essentially a new area, and you get on a train, and the game goes from this open world game to like this linear set of cutscenes, and the game ends, which is what happens when they don't have enough time to finish a game.
Right.
And they just have to rush it out. It's generally how it plays out. And they put out some DLC with Arden, who's the main antagonist, and some DLC with some of the characters of your companions that fleshed in some of the stuff that wasn't there when the game first came out. Playing all of those and then going back and reading like NeoGAF forums on what people and supposed leaks on what the original scope was going to be. I remember being really, even though some of the details I don't remember, I remember feeling like, holy shit, if they would have been able to pull off the original vision of Versus 13, it might have been the greatest Final Fantasy ever. From what I understand, all the main story elements were all in 15. Arden was going to be the main bad guy. So anyway, it's been a while since I dove into that. I'm wondering how much you know about that and what you can rattle off the top of your head.
I think I've got basically the same inkling that you did. It seems that a lot of the main narrative elements that were constructed for Versus 13 got used in 15. I think they used 15 as this kind of vehicle they wanted 15 to be this, not just a Final Fantasy video game, but they wanted it to be this entire media experience, right? So they made the Kingsglaive movie, they made like a mobile game for it, they made all this extra stuff that basically force you to engage with all this extra stuff to get the full concept of the story. It seemed to me that a lot of those elements were present from what we are allowed to know about Versus 13, and they just chopped all those up and piecemealed it out to try and squeeze every single cent they could out of 15. The part where the story about Versus 13 gets interesting is that this game, at least the idea of it, is not necessarily dead yet, and this is jumping ahead to Kingdom Hearts 3.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
there's a couple of tiny things in Kingdom Hearts 3 that have the community scratching their heads about some of Nomura's recycled ideas for Versus 13. In the Toy Story world, there's an in-game video game in the Toy Story world called Verum Rex, translated from Latin is called True King. And that video game uses a lot of exaggerated character elements from some of the stuff you see in 15 and 13 in that game. And the main character of that in-game universe is called Yozora. A lot of it kind of matches up. Like, so Yozora kind of looks like Noctis. The girl in the Verum Rex game kind of looks like Luna Freya from 15. So there's some interesting elements in there. When Kingdom Hearts 3 first came out, we thought that was just maybe like a tiny little Easter egg, like maybe like Nomura's nod to like, hey, I was working on Versus 13. Maybe this was him like finally putting his baby to sleep. Fast forward 1 year later to when the Remind DLC drops for Kingdom Hearts 3. There's a secret episode in there after Sora. You get some of the extra story content from Sora, where he meets that character from the Verum Rex video game, Yozora, and he's one of the secret final bosses in the game. It's one of the fucking coolest, most difficult boss fights I've ever done in any video game. That boss fight can end in two ways. You can win that boss fight or you can lose it. Both endings appear to be canon with like some multiverse shit that's going on in there. But after that fight, the next scene is the famous trailer scene from Versus 13 where like Noctis is riding in the car and he's like kind of sleeping with his head like on the window. And it's a shot for shot recreation of that scene with that character Yozora and another character who's in the organization Luxord. Like, it's a shot for shot recreation, and the Luxord calls Yozora commander, just like in the original Versus 13 trailer. And there's a big kind of prevailing theory that Nomura is bringing some of these like Versus 13 elements into Kingdom Hearts 4, and maybe Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to be his way to realize some of the things he wanted to do in Versus 13 and kind of have his say on a project that he feels like he missed out on, because there's so many elements and things going into Kingdom Hearts 4 that just appear to be lining up with what he wanted to do with Versus 13.
It's interesting because Kingdom Hearts 4, so far, what we've been revealed, which is that one trailer, right? There's still only that one trailer.
There's only the one trailer. Yes.
It has a much more realistic aesthetic.
Yes.
Which moves it in that direction.
And according to the end of the game, where Sora is in that trailer is it's a place called Unreality. It's like a parallel universe to the Kingdom Hearts universe that's called Unreality. Apparently, like, Yozora is in that world, and we don't know if like the Final Fantasy Versus 13 stuff will be there, tie in, how that will all tie in. But Nomura appears to be bringing those elements from his failed project like forward into whatever Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to be, and tying that into the arc that he's setting up for those games. So Versus 13 in some way, despite it being dead for a long time, is still kind of alive in a true form. I mean, that's why they called the in-game video game Verum Rex. That's translated to True King. I don't know if that's a Nomura being cheeky, saying that Final Fantasy 15 is kind of like this bastardization of his baby. It's not a true king, it's a false king.
Yeah.
Right? And that game even kind of deals with some themes of like a true king and a false king. And even 15 has a real heavy theming of like light and darkness in it. It ties in Kingdom Hearts. So there's the community starting to like build this web of, I don't know if it'll ever come true, but it seems to be that this old project of Nomura's is somehow connected to the future of Kingdom Hearts. Whether it's going to be a way that he can somehow realize that project that he always wanted to in this future Kingdom Hearts installment, I don't know. But the proof is there, and the nods are there. So they wouldn't bother reconstructing the entire trailer scene at the end of the DLC for no reason, I don't think.
Yeah, if it was just a tease or an Easter egg, it seems like an excessive use of resources, unless you're planning on actually doing something more than that.
And it's suspicious that he would do that too, considering that he's alluded to before that he's not allowed to talk about what actually happened with that project ultimately. So I don't think he would just go against his bosses and just do that if he didn't have some kind of blessing to be able to recycle or reuse those ideas in whatever he's setting up next for the future of the series.
Do you think Kingdom Hearts 4 is his swan song and he retires?
So there was an interview with him recently. I think it was either at like Tokyo Game Show or one of the recent shows that happened. He talked about retiring. Based on the way he answers some of the questions, it seems that he wants Kingdom Hearts to end. He doesn't want it to continue on like forever the way Final Fantasy does. And it seems that Kingdom Hearts 4 is like the first step in him wrapping up whatever the rest of the story that he wants to tell.
Now, is he going to do that in a single game?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Seems like there's a lot to wrap up. Like, can you do it in one game?
Yeah, knowing just the way Nomura is and the way that he can't help himself when it comes to creating things, I can't imagine that it would be in one game, whether it's a trilogy. I don't think we'll get 3 main games and like 8 spin-off handheld games. I think maybe he'll do like a trilogy and try and wrap it up. Maybe. I mean, the dude is in his like early to mid 50s. He's thinking about retirement. He doesn't want to do this forever. He's been creating at Square since Final Fantasy V he was brought on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's been doing this a long time, and he's been working on, it seems like he's been working on 8 games at a time for like 40 years of his life almost. So I imagine the dude probably wants a break, but he seems like he wants to conclude the series and not let it outlive its stay, I guess. Maybe kind of like Final Fantasy. I don't know if Disney will allow that to happen or Square will allow that to happen if Kingdom Hearts is still making money, but he wants to at least conclude the story that he's telling. Yes. And Disney, for all of how like hyper controlling they are about all their intellectual properties now, seems pretty content to just let Nomura do what he wants with Kingdom Hearts, even though that Disney owns the rights to the characters. Technically, they don't do anything with the characters unless they run it by Nomura first. So it's very interesting that Disney is so like willing to trust Nomura with something that they technically own and their characters, and whether they continue forward without him. I guess I imagine that they would try to continue without him if he did retire, because Disney just doesn't let things lie. I mean, look at the state of,
they got money to make.
Yeah, right? Look at the state of like Star Wars, or like Marvel is still going. Like, they're not just going to stop making money, but they're very hands off when it comes to Kingdom Hearts. It's surprising.
I've always thought it's weird that he's even able to continue to ship these games over the years with the way Disney's acted. Like, you think someone would come along and just, I don't know, kind of want to just, maybe he is getting pushed around and being forced. We don't know. He's not public about it. Obviously,
right.
He doesn't want to ruin. He's in this weird spot, I think, because he's legendary for Final Fantasy, but I feel like Kingdom Hearts is his. Where Final Fantasies is everybody's, and he's a big part of that history, and he's an integral, and he's a legend in that history.
Yeah.
But Kingdom Hearts is his.
When he ultimately retires, that he'll be known for Kingdom Hearts, and I think, barring if they stick the landing with the 7 remake trilogy, I think the 7 remake trilogy and Kingdom Hearts will be what kind of defines him as an artist, as a creative, as a person in the industry.
He didn't direct Rebirth, 7 Rebirth.
I think he's a creative director. I don't think he's like the game director. I think he's a creative director.
But I think he did he direct Remake?
Those are his characters, though. He's not going to let that game leave without his say-so. So
no, he was. So I was right. I knew that he directed. He's amongst 3 directors credited for Remake, and then he stepped aside and he didn't direct Rebirth. But I knew that he started that. Yeah. Yeah, he's not good. Those are his things. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Disney part of it, too, is even more impressive when you consider that Masahiro Sakurai somehow got them to put Sora in Smash Bros. Like, that's a legal nightmare. I imagine it's a legal nightmare to get any character in Smash Bros.
I mean Metal Gear, Konami's not the awesomest company, at least from the general public's point of view, and Snake got in there.
I think that's a testament to how much people trust Masahiro Sakurai as the director of that game. But he would not only have gone to Square and Tetsuya Nomura, he would have gotten approval from Disney. And so he would have had to have ran all the decisions by Disney and by Nomura, and Nomura's incredibly meticulous for the way he likes things presented. And you know how Disney is about literally everything. Involving anything, Disney tends to make things more complicated. So that's why he's the perfect final character for Smash. That it's a miracle that he's in that game at all. And I think they noticed too that while the handheld games might have served them in the past to like make them money and stuff and support the bigger flagship franchises, I think Nomura realized that in order to have 3 be successful, he needed to put out all the games in one spot to be accessible. That's why they did all the HD collections, so that all the games were in one place, so that you knew what would be happening. Because like you said, you tried to play 3 going straight from 2, and you were like, well, what the fuck?
Yeah, so if I wanted to get into 3, but I don't want to play through all the games, would it be worth it just to watch cutscenes and I could pretty much follow what's going on? Or is the story going to require me to watch cutscenes, go on Reddit threads, get some, read some breakdowns for me to really understand what's going on in 3 to get the max value out of it? Because it looks cool.
Yeah.
You showed me this True King fight that I looked up, the Remind Yozora boss fight.
Yeah, it's fucking wild.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's nuts. So if you wanted the most express like Cliff Notes version of possible, I would say 1 and 2 are required playing. You can play 2 without playing Chain of Memories. I played 2 without Chain of Memories, and it's a little more confusing, but I don't think Chain of Memories is essential. The card-based systems in Chain of Memories are kind of antiquated and not really that fun. So yeah, I would play 1, I'd play 2. I don't think 358 Days is necessary. That's maybe just cutscene viewing. Recoded is completely unnecessary, so you don't have to play Recoded. Birth by Sleep is critical. So Birth by Sleep is one you have to play because that introduces Xehanort, the overarching villain, basically the overarching plot. The 3DS one, Dream Drop Distance, is important because Dream Drop Distance is technically the direct sequel to Kingdom Hearts 2, and that game leads into 3. So you'd have to play
the chronological gap between 2 and 3 is Dream Drop Distance.
Yes. That sets up everything that happens in 3 basically. So if I was saying things you had to play, it would probably be 1, 2, Birth by Sleep, Dream Drop Distance to have the basic things, and then there's some stuff in 358 that gets brought forward into 3. Recoded basically doesn't matter, and like Chain of Memories doesn't really matter. There's a mobile game that's now defunct that actually does matter. The lore of that sets up post Kingdom Hearts 3, which is a gripe I have all about the mobile game by itself. But there's an hour-long movie that they included in the 2.8 HD collection called Back Cover X, I think it's called, that summarizes the events of the mobile game so you know what happens in Kingdom Hearts 3. So that also is probably required viewing so you know.
What was that called again?
Kingdom Hearts Back Cover X if you're searching it.
All right, so you can watch these cutscenes. And this is post 3?
The mobile game is technically canonically the first entry in the series. The events in the mobile game take place before everything else. It's the earliest time point
Back
in the
Cover
Kingdom Hearts
X
series.
Is the first.
Yes.
Okay.
But I wouldn't watch that one first. I would play them chronologically because that's the way they're meant to be. And that's the way I've presented it in my podcast series. So even though Back Cover and the mobile game take place first, I still think the way you build the knowledge from playing them in release order is the way they're meant to be played. And that's the way that Nomura builds out the knowledge for you.
Like you would know too much too early if you started, and it would kind of ruin the flow of how things get revealed to you.
I think that there's so many high level series concepts in the mobile game that if you try to do that one first, you'd just be like, what the hell is going on?
You don't even understand what all this means. Yeah.
Because that even though that game is the earliest point in the timeline, it basically is expecting you to know
everything. Yeah.
Like the concepts and the stuff going on in the series. And that game gets, in the mobile game, gets fucking bonkers because the mobile game was basically one of those gacha games where you like draw the medals and the characters with the premium currency, and then they release story missions for that for like 5-6 years. And that story gets just out of fucking control.
Okay, so that goes first, and then you have Birth by Sleep.
Yes.
And you would say play Birth by Sleep first, even though that wasn't released first. Then play.
No, I would say play Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 first, and then Birth by Sleep. I think that's definitely the way to go.
Damn, dude, this looks really cool. The cutscenes from this.
The cutscene movie is gorgeous. I just have qualms about the way that information is presented. We're going off the rails here, man. The mobile game was never supposed to tie into the main series. It was never intended to when it was in like the concept and development phase. But Nomura just can't help himself. And he started tying little bits of it to Kingdom Hearts 3. And then he started tying more. And then he started tying more. And then he started tying more. And eventually the mobile game morphed into this thing where it deals with like the lost Keyblade Masters, and the next arc of the Kingdom Hearts series after 3 is called the Lost Masters arc. So the mobile game basically sets up all that prerequisite information for like the next arc of the series. So yeah, it's nuts, dude.
Well, I can't go on Kingdom Hearts forever. I am definitely. I got this on a Google Doc. Got some spreadsheet. It is a series that one day I want to come and take more seriously, because again, I loved 1 and 2, and then it's obviously become this big thing. I know there's lots of people out there like you that are all in. They love it. So
yes,
it makes me like, I mean, I can tell how much passion you talk with it and how much like genuine enjoyment. And I'm like that with other stuff. I'm like, this sounds fun. Like maybe I want to get into Kingdom Hearts and
I gotta say too, I think in our little community, I'm probably known as the Kingdom Hearts guy. I stand on the shoulders of giants. The people in the Kingdom Hearts community are more knowledgeable than me. They've already like broken down the trailer. They already have like of the 4th game. They've already like identified like the language on some of the street signs and like broken down some of that. Like the Kingdom Hearts community is rabid, and I stand on the I stand on the shoulders of people that have figured out way more shit than I have. I've basically just taken the information that's already existed and put it in a very comprehensive podcast form. Yeah. If you want to, you can go down the rabbit hole of like trailer analyzation and like all these like crazy theories. Like the rabbit hole goes deep, and the Kingdom Hearts community is one of the most passionate communities out there for stuff like that. They go hard, and they've come up with concepts that I would say I have a pretty good understanding of the game and of the series. I don't even know what they're talking about. So
I'm always attracted to, I think like hardcore nerdism or passion is very seductive. It's very sexy. That's why I keep toying around with buying Warhammer, the new 2K Warhammer, because people who are into Warhammer are fucking into Warhammer. Yeah. It overtakes their life. I'm like, damn, that looks fun too. People love this Warhammer shit.
I played Space Marine 2, and that was my first experience with Warhammer. Yeah, holy shit. Warhammer is wormholes inside of deep dives, and then when you think you've reached the bottom, it goes deeper, and then there's a side man, Warhammer is fucking insane.
Yeah, that's another one where I'm like, I'll come back to it when, I don't know, there's more games. You can buy big bundles, and there's nice like Reddit threads that just cover everything. I'll get to this eventually. It's been very intriguing. But I want to finish up with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
I've been doing this probably the last like 15, 20 episodes, and it's my favorite part. So who is the best antagonist in any game you've played?
Best antagonist? I think it would be Master Xehanort.
Okay. I thought we're probably going to get some Kingdom Hearts answers here.
Do you want me to elaborate, or you just want to rapid fire them?
Yeah, no, tell me why. Without, I guess, how can you say why you love him without obviously spoiling everything?
As an antagonist, he is the perfect counterpoint to everything, all the themes that Kingdom Hearts emphasizes and stresses, right? Friendship, bonds, connection with the people around you, following your heart. He is the polar opposite in all of those ways, in a way that he runs completely opposite to what the entire series tries to teach you. And it's utterly brilliant.
So he's like, I use everybody. I'm all alone. I'm the only one. I do everything myself. I control everything.
He would rather make 13 versions of himself than work with people to make the world a better place.
So Organization 13 is the Horcrux version of Xehanort or whatever?
Essentially, yes.
So him and Voldemort are practicing the same magic.
Essentially, yes.
Damn. Well, now I kind of know what Organization 13 is. I was wondering, that was one of the things where I'm like, when they showed up, I was like, what the fuck is going on? I'm so confused. I have no idea what's going on.
Whereas Sora relies on his friends, Xehanort is so disillusioned with the state of the world that he decides, I and I alone can fix it. And to do it, I will make 13 versions of myself because I can only rely on myself. And in the game when Kingdom Hearts, where it stresses friendship and bonds and the togetherness, like that's fucking, that's an affront to the entire series.
That's pretty badass. I've always thought the concept of Voldemort and the Horcrux is one of the most metal, cool, like black magic ideas.
Yeah. Sorry, I derailed your rapid fire.
No, that's fine. What is Your biggest disappointment in gaming, like you were super hyped and then you were let down.
Oh shit. That's difficult because I generally find myself a pretty optimistic person about most games. There are very, very rare instances where I picked up a game and came away from it feeling like I didn't enjoy it to some degree or it wasted my time. I guess if I could approach the question by saying like something that was hyped up so much that when I played it, it didn't live up to the hype, maybe
That works.
that would have to be Undertale, probably. And
I've never
I still,
played it, but the hype is insane.
I still think Undertale is it's a fantastic game. I just think it was so hyped up that there was no possible way it could live up to any expectation that was possibly set for it. I think. Actually, I do have one. This one might be spicy. I was disappointed by Red Dead Redemption 2.
Whoa.
That might be a spicy one.
Dude, that's for sure spicy. Some people would say that's heresy.
It might be. And I don't think it's not because it's a great. Well, I have a gripe with Rockstar's games. I think Rockstar's control schemes are travesties.
They're wonky, to say the least.
They are not modern control schemes by any degree. For some reason, I fell off of Red Dead 2 and I never felt the desire to go back. I don't know why. I think Arthur Morgan's a great character. I think the characters are I think it's a great story. I fell off like halfway through and I just had no desire to go back and
that far. I loved Red Dead 1. Red Dead 2
I platinumed or completed Red Dead 1. So
yeah, I cried at the end of Red Dead 1. I thought the ending sequence was absolutely amazing. Red Dead 2 came out and I didn't get it immediately. It was, for me, it was just timing. It was too, like, I wasn't interested in a big, sprawling, overwhelming open world game where everything was so slow.
That might be it. Yeah.
I just like, I have to pet my horse. I have to put the thing, like, I just want to get off my horse and go in the building. I don't want to, like, it's just, I was not in the mood for that granular of detail and having to do all these tiny little things. And I was like, I don't have the patience for this. I'll come back to it. And then I just haven't. I've never, and people love that game. They love the story. And I know I got to get back to it. But so it's heretical what you say, but I'm not really, I'm not too bothered by it. What is the most emotional a game has ever made you and why?
Oh, well, two answers. So the first one is Final Fantasy IX. The end sequence when VV is like reading his letter as he's like basically dying, and it kind of shows you where all the characters are, and the main kind of theme of Final Fantasy IX is playing. Princess Garnet is singing it. That's just such a beautiful moment. I've played Final Fantasy IX probably like 30 times, and I cry every time at that scene. The end of Kingdom Hearts 3, when I finished it for the first time, I cried because it had been a story that I had followed for like 20 years of my life. At the time I finished it, I was going through like a transition in my life. I was getting out of my parents' house. Like I met the person who eventually would be my wife, and it kind of felt like the marking of like an end of an era of my life with all those characters and kind of moving on. So those would be the two that I think that move me to tears the most. Bonus one, when Dom dies in Gears of War 3. Oh, that made good. That made me cry, man. I was like, I'd been through like 3 games with Dom as my boy, and
fucking brother.
Yeah, he fucking blew himself up. I was like, man, this is sad.
That's a good one. None of those have been brought up. Nice. It makes me interested because I have the impression, and tell me if I seems like I'm wrong, that when Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, even the Kingdom Hearts fans were very disappointed. But you don't seem like you have any really, seems like you loved that game.
So my feelings on that game are complicated. I think it partially has to do with hype. I don't think there was any version of the game that came out that could live up to what I wanted it to be and expected it to be. And I think that's partially my fault. So I try not to blame the game for that. In terms of gameplay and design and the way the Disney worlds are represented and everything you think about Kingdom Hearts should be, I think Kingdom Hearts 3 is a fantastically designed game. It plays incredible. The worlds are incredibly immersive to explore. It succeeds on all of those fronts. I think the part where it disappoints me is in the Kingdom Hearts side of the story, because by the time 3 came out, I wasn't really interested in the Disney stuff anymore. And I understand that the Disney crossover is part of the appeal of Kingdom Hearts. It's essential. It's not going anywhere. But the Disney stuff takes up so much of the runtime of 3 and nothing happens. By the time we get to the end of the game, there's so much to wrap up and there's so much to resolve with all these different characters. I don't feel like any of the characters that I have come to love over the last 20 years got time to breathe or got proper spotlight or got properly fleshed out endings to the point where I felt kind of satisfied with them, because you get done with Disney Worlds and the game's got like a 5-hour sprint to the end where just like so much crazy stuff happens. And I think I was just disappointed that those characters didn't get time to like breathe and interact with one another in the way I wanted them to. It's one of my problems with the way Nomura tells stories, is that he tends to get so wrapped up in like the hype endings and all the crazy stuff that he's doing that sometimes he doesn't pause to let moments breathe. It was one of my problems I had when I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and a lot of the stuff that happens in that game. I just didn't feel like a lot of moments that needed to breathe were given time to kind of breathe.
I haven't played Rebirth. I'm waiting for the whole trilogy to come out.
I'm glad I didn't say then.
Yeah, no, I haven't kept myself completely unspoiled.
Right. Okay.
And I've definitely been reading on forums and people arguing about the ending and different interpretations. And he does seem to do that. It's like, but you also want this finale that's sort of like over the top and feels like a finale. And that balance can be hard. I think they nailed it. I mean, I know he didn't direct it, but 16 nails it.
Yes.
To me.
Yeah, I think 16's pretty well paced. Yeah, I'm just finishing up 3 in my podcast series now. And even as I'm writing the final script for the final episode where I'm trying to process my thoughts, I'm having a hard time because it is a fantastic game, but I still have these lingering feelings about the way the story was told. It's such a stark contrast to Kingdom Hearts 2 in the way that game ends. Like that game ends on a very like somber personal note where it's a showdown with Xemnas with Sora and Riku, and then Sora and Riku have several minutes at the end of that game to kind of breathe and talk to one another about what has happened since the first 2 games and be honest and vulnerable with one another. And there's just those moments don't happen in Kingdom Hearts 3, I feel.
So I'm going to amend this next question a little bit. Normally I ask if Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or someone was just like, you know what, Eric, I just have way too much money and I don't give a fuck about it because I'm a billionaire. Go make whatever game you want, hire whoever you want. And what would you make? But I'm going to add some extra wrinkles to yours because you're such a big Kingdom Hearts fan.
Yeah.
If Nomura died.
Oh God.
Said, Eric, you're in charge of Kingdom Hearts 4. What do you do? Or you're in charge of just making the next, maybe not 4. Let's say 4 gets finished. You're in charge of the next Kingdom Hearts game. Obviously, the story stuff you'd have to be read into. But what would you do, and how would you change, and how would you evolve the formula? Maybe who would you hire? What would you switch up? What would you do if you could make your perfect Kingdom Hearts game?
Yeah, I think in terms of the main storyline stuff, I wouldn't want to touch any of the stuff with Sora because that's like Nomura's boy. I think there's some opportunity for some stuff from the mobile timeline era to be told that I think would make a pretty cool game, because the mobile game deals with the Keyblade War, which is like the event that basically destroys the entire world. The aftermath of that, there's like this group, this order of Keyblade wielders that kind of like rises up to protect the world, almost kind of like a Jedi Order type thing, where it's like people have Keyblades and they go out into the world and stuff like that. Some of that stuff's kind of been told in some mobile stuff and some stuff elaborating on Xehanort's past. I think there's room in there to kind of tell a story in that world during like this era of Order of Keyblade wielders and stuff like that. I think there's a story to be told in there. And they're coming out with another mobile game called Missing Link that is going to take place kind of in that time period. But I don't want it to be a mobile game. I'd love to do like a fully fleshed out, like 40-hour action RPG set in maybe that time period to kind of maybe flesh out a little bit more that part of the lore.
Would you change anything up with how the gameplay and battle system works? Or would you say, I'm just going to do what they've been doing, not broke, don't fix it?
Yeah, probably not broke, don't fix it. Maybe it'd be cool to like bring in, if I could just cherry pick anybody, maybe bring in like Platinum and do maybe like a combat system with them, because I think that maybe that would be pretty cool. The cool thing about the Kingdom Hearts games is even in the handheld spin-offs is having gone back and play them all. If you play them all in a row like I have, if you're an insane person, they do a really good job of like building off of each other. So one sets a really strong foundation, and then two kind of refines what the foundation of that system is for the rest of the series. And then Birth by Sleep adds the command deck system, and Recoded adds like a spin on the command deck system with the ability system. And then Dream Drop Distance adds like flow motion and all this other stuff. And all that stuff gets refined and brought forward into Kingdom Hearts 3. So like Nomura experiments with all these games and then brings forward his best ideas to like his ultimate thing. So Kingdom Hearts 3 is probably the most perfect pinnacle form of that, even though I prefer the gameplay of Kingdom Hearts 2. So yeah, I probably wouldn't. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm sure there's a way that he will find to iterate on whatever that is for Kingdom Hearts 4, but I mean, he's the genius. I'm not. So
if you had a bajillion dollars from Bezos, but you couldn't make Kingdom Hearts, what would you make? Who would you hire?
Oh man, that's a great question. I've always thought if I could get away with, if I had this all the money and I could somehow acquire the rights to like the Pokemon franchise, giving the Pokemon franchise to like somebody other than Game Freak to do just something with, anything different than what they've been doing, would be very, very cool. Whether that's like give Pokemon to like Naughty Dog or Santa Monica Studios or something, and just be like, here, make something that's, make it like something that's not, make it like a AAA modern like Pokemon game. I've always thought that would be really, really interesting. Or give it to the people that make Resident Evil and make a really effed up Pokemon game. Something to free that IP, that franchise, from just the monotony it seems to be stuck in.
You are definitely not the only person that has answered that question that way.
That's good.
I feel the Pokemon fans almost unanimously feel they're grateful for what they can get, but they feel we haven't got a proper modern AAA Pokemon at the level of some of these other franchises, which doesn't make sense because Pokemon is just printing money.
Right. I think as a fan too, if you're playing, like obviously where the fans are going, I've played every single one that's come out just because it's like a nostalgia thing, and it's nice. Like me and my wife will sit down and play the one that comes out like every year. Basically, it's like a thing that we do. I think that if you've been a long time fan like I have and you've supported them with so much money, I think it's not wrong of you to like stand up and be like, hey, you know, it's 2024 now. Like we demand something that is a quality product that is like different, takes some risks, that is like really finely polished. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Not at all. And it's definitely come up a bunch. Eric, where can people find you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is I have the old man link tree. So go to linktr.ee/Unlockables podcast. All the good stuff is there. But yeah, Blue Sky, Instagram, it's just Unlockables podcast. And then my Instagram's on there. My YouTube page is on there. I want to start doing some more YouTube video stuff with all the game footage that I'm taking. So I might go to there too. Unlockables podcast on YouTube. All the podcasts get put up there too. So the podcast, the Unlockables podcast, is available on pretty much any podcatcher of your choice. The main one I push is Spotify because I use the Spotify for Podcasters uploader for my RSS feed because it's free. So I'm not necessarily thrilled about that, but you know, can't beat free, and money is tight right now. So
I hadn't followed you on YouTube yet. You've done some like YouTube content.
So all the podcasts get posted there, and then I did one kind of like retrospective style video on Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, I'm watching. Okay.
Yeah, it was my first playthrough of Ocarina of Time ever in the year 2024. I played it this year for the first time, and I wanted to just see if that was viable and if I enjoyed video editing. And I'm a marketer by trade, so marketing is what I'm in, and I just felt like maybe doing something with that could enhance my video editing skills and just see how that went. So yeah, I do have one retrospective up there on Ocarina of Time. I want to do some others as well. I have some ideas for some videos I'd maybe like to do, but you know, it's just a time thing with kids and stuff. So yeah, if you want to subscribe on there, you can. You follow all that's your preferred podcast listening. I know some people listen to it only on YouTube. That's their preferred way. That's fine. And yeah, I might upload more videos there in the future.
Sounds good, dude. Well, check him out. The Old Man Linktree will be in the podcast description or the YouTube video description or wherever you're checking it out. It will be done. I also use Old Man Linktree we don't need anything more. It's not old man. It's just efficient. One link to rule them all. Like, why do we need more links?
I also brought back the on your encouragement, actually, Kate. I brought back the Unlockables Patreon as well.
Oh yes. What is Did I join? I think I joined it, right?
So it's Unlockables patreon.com/Unlockables podcast. I think it is. And like again, I don't expect anybody to give me monetary compensation.
Tell them, give me your money
for what I do. There's one $3 tier. I tried to do some extra stuff. You can vote on the community game of the month every month if you want to. This month we're playing the game chosen by the Discord denizens, and Patreon we're playing Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. So it's my first playthrough of Sly Cooper. I'm pretty excited for that. Yeah, if you just want to support, a small content creator, you can. Or if you're not, I don't paywall any of the stuff. All my stuff that I work on really hard, like my guiding keys and all that stuff, goes into the main feed. I don't restrict that to anybody. It's just, if you want to support local content creators. There's not that much stuff on there yet. I'm gonna add some more stuff, hopefully in the future.
You got Patreon shout out, exclusive Discord channel, gaming polls, personal vlogs, and solo episodes. So check that out. I will. I officially endorse the Unblockables podcast as a candidate for one of my favorite podcasts. I've done a lot of great podcasts with Eric. We've done some King of Game stuff. It's always been a good time. He always puts way more effort in preparation into preparing for podcasts that we've been on together than I do. He's a real professional.
Come on. You and Chris have carried those episodes. Come on, I just show up.
It's been fun. So I think I've definitely check out all of our gaming friends podcasts. I'll just like, what are you talking about? What game? I've definitely popped in, checked out a bunch of your episodes. You put on a good show. So I highly recommend people checking it out. I like that your show is a little more, you don't always know what you're going to get. Like you're going to get episodes and then boom, you get a Kingdom Hearts episode and then you're going to get other stuff. I see the good and the bad when like someone has a very set formula. And it's that everything, you're a fan of it. I'm going to get it. I go to McDonald's, I get my double cheese. It's the awesomest. Please don't change it. I love content like that when I'm in the mood. And I also I don't know what I'm going to get. Right. I think it's awesome. Anything else you want to say?
No, just, hey, thank you for having me on. I know we've been trying to do this for a long time.
I know.
Yeah, it certainly lived up to my expectations. Podcast bucket list item for me. So, thank you so much. You've inspired me personally with my content creation, with all the stuff that you do, your podcast, your short form video. So I take a lot of inspiration from that stuff. A lot of stuff I'd like to try and do myself. So thank you for having me on. And to the Gaming Memories fans out there, your community, thank you for allowing me to be in your ear holes for a couple of hours.
Yeah, we're at 2.5, which is actually not too bad for me.
Let's cut out some of that no more rambling in the middle. It's fine.
I don't know. That was some of my favorite spot. I was like, I don't want to go too deep. But anytime I get someone who's like obsessed about something, I've got to I got to mine that out of them. You know what I mean? You want to pull out what makes each person unique. So if I have a Kingdom Hearts head that's just all in,
it's true.
It's an opaque. From the outside, it's a very intimidating IP to get back into.
Yes, that's why I started the podcast series, because that was going around. I mean, people made jokes in the Discords. It's like, oh, you can't understand it. And I'm like, well, I think I can make you understand it. So
yeah, I think you should do like a supercut or something when you finish.
Oh man,
a supercut when you finish Kingdom Hearts 3 and you get all your episodes. Like if you did I don't know, but you have 40 hours, right?
It's the playlist on Spotify is 24 episodes, like just at about 40 hours right now. And there's still one more Kingdom Hearts 3 episode. I have to do the second part of the mobile game. There's a addendum to the mobile game I have to do, and then Melody of Memory. So there's still 4 more episodes left.
If you could somehow boil that down into 3 2-hour or 1-hour YouTube videos, I bet you would get a quadrillion views.
Yes, it's certainly possible. I've maybe been playing with the idea a little bit, and I'm sure, like I said, that's been my baby. That's kind of been the thing that's defined my show. I've gone back and listened to some of the older episodes, and I've found mistakes and things that I've said wrong and said incorrectly. So it's by no means perfect, but I think if you're just looking to kind of get into and understand the series, it's not a bad place to start.
Let's do it. All right. Thank you, Eric, Kingdom Hearts expert. Until then, remember to share the good news of the gaming gospel. Ye shall be blessed. I say these things in the name of me, Mother the Father, Coach, the Son, and Carmack, the motherfucking Holy Ghost. Amen. Game on. Bye.